So I'm Gary Diggins, and we're in the setting of what I call my sound sanctuary. And the premise of my work is that long before human beings had words and language, sound was how we connected and communicated. And that's true certainly in our personal lives, as we started out as the prenatal being and then moved through the human experience. We were able to express an array of emotions largely through sound. So the premise of sound work is to say that either in an individual or a group context, we can use that kind of language that's beyond words as a way of connecting with people, of connecting with their challenges that they're working with, and as a way ultimately of building community.
Wow.
So over decades I've worked with various marginalized communities. I like the word vulnerable communities. I think it gets really to more of the emotive side of things. But one particular experience comes from my decade-long work in Africa, and particularly in the northern part of Uganda. I was working with Acholi youth who had been abducted, many of them, in the middle of the night and forced to commit terrible atrocities and be a part of a rogue LRA army. And so essentially they were forced to be child soldiers. So when they escaped, or whether they were recaptured by the Ugandan army, some of them ended up, about 150 of them, in this community called Hope North. And there soccer and music were really integral to their healing process and dealing especially with trauma. So I spent a lot of time working in their context of music making in terms of drumming and dancing and singing. But what they didn't have was something outside of that folkloric tradition of the Acholi people. And so I began to introduce some practices that would be especially helpful for traumatized individuals and communities. And that had a lot to do with contemplative sounding. And to the best of my knowledge, that mindful music practice is still embedded in the community of Hope North. So for me, community, the essence of community is about belonging. I think it's hardwired into us as human beings to belong to a family, belong to a society. There are very unhealthy ways and dysfunctional ways that sometimes people are coerced and forced into that sense of belonging to a community. So one of the tools of the expressive arts, I believe, is to provide skills that foster well-being through healthy practices that are embodied in various expressive arts. In my case, in terms of sounding or music making, the end goal is to give an embodied experience of what it's like to collaborate and co-create with others. So once that practice is experienced and digested, it can become a kind of mnemonic device, a memory device for practices in communication and other healthy forms of connecting with people. So when the participants come here, my first premise is to create a safe space for risk-taking. So establishing trust is really predicated on the notion that you gain trust by creating a certain focus on the context before the content. So once we've got that established, that we're not in a critical space, that we're in a supportive space and a caring space and a place where you can participate in a way that's right for you, then we begin to interact in a way that is really less about me. I'm just hosting and facilitating, and it's more about engagement between the participants. And so I will bring to that process a number of user-friendly instruments and a user-friendly approach so that no one feels shamed, centered out, or an obligatory feeling like they have to do something a certain way, but instead it's creating a space to express and explore. I, from my present understanding, get the sense that these participants are coming from a very tough situation, and I feel that disruption of that experience is really helpful in terms of leaving a known world, entering an unknown journey, with the end goal that when they go back, there will be some skills that can then be embedded in new ways and perhaps shift not only the perspective but the behavior within that context. So I feel that my role has a lot to do with impacting their sense that even though they're in an unknown realm where everything from the instruments and the sensorial information of food and whatnot is different, that they're in a safe space. So in the hero's journey, we meet allies and helpers along the way that are there to not dole out their resources to us, but instead to kind of conjure up the inner resources that are already there. So that's my job, is to be like a musician, magician. You know, I hope that the youth going through the journey, first of all, will have an enjoyable experience of risk-taking, so that doing something new or for the first time doesn't become a threat, and the reinforcement of that message that you can go to your edge and go a little further and take a chance then becomes a kind of life motif that is relevant to other situations in terms of education or possibility, that you can dream bigger than you've ever dreamed before. It's not that you have to walk away becoming an expert moccasin maker or musician, but that you did something that maybe you even thought in your own mind you were incapable of doing, and succeeded. I feel that this project is important on a number of different levels, but the core of it is that it is working with a peer circle. So these are young people who, even though they come from different circumstantial factors, there is a common theme that they are living a vulnerable life in vulnerable times with other vulnerable youth. And so I think it's important for them to get that people who are just a little further down that human lifeline and journey care about their future and care about what their unfurling could be. So I feel that it's really an important message, and like a seedling, I want to see that flourish and flower and bear fruit. What do I hope to gain from this experience? Well, you know, I haven't really thought so much about that, but I do feel that I'm hardwired to be a compassionate person. And so there hopefully is a kind of feedback that my caring and my contribution has been of meaning to someone else, and that in turn feeds my soul. Somebody just sent me this wonderful Emily Dickinson, who was a poet of 100 years plus ago, and she said, "If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I can ease one life the aching, or cool one pain, or help one fainting robin unto his nest again, I shall not live in vain." So that's what I hope to get. I would like to say and acknowledge and honor the tremendous perseverance on the part of the Yuva team to make this possible. This has had all kinds of complexities and obstacles and intricacies that many people would just say, this is a no-can-do project. I'm sorry, but I've really loved the qualities of patience, yet perseverance to see it through all the way to the end, knowing that all the time this is not just a one-off. So there's a big vision behind this project that says this is the first wave, but more circles will begin to grow from this. So a great word of gratitude for all the players.